Welcome to the Create Today podcast. This show is all about how you can create the life that you want, no matter what shit you've been through. Today, my special guest is Jill Bunny. Yes, that's her actual legal last name, and we'll tell you about that in a second. Jill is an amazing therapist. She has so much to teach us and so much experience and was many, many things before she was a therapist, which we will jump into that first. Jill, thank you so much for being here. I am so honored to have you here.
No, thank you. It is an absolute honor to be here with you and hopefully just give some wisdom to some incredible listeners. So thank you. And I always say our time is of value. So let's dive in and have some fun along the way.
I totally agree. I want to start with your first marriage because I listened to another one of your episodes, your interviews, and I was blown away with your first experience, your first relationship, and what happened. If you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I always say, I guess young girls don't want to admit that their moms are right, but usually moms are right. And my mom was. So if she is listening to this, she's going to smile. So there you go, Mom, you were right.
Sorry, Mom.
And right, they just know best. So going through high school, I have a very interesting brother. I'll just kind of leave it at that, where a bully, very scary. And because of that, didn't really get the chance and opportunity to have dating and boyfriends and, really understand what a significant partner and being should look like, what a healthy relationship is. And because of that, I decided, you know what, I'm going to move as far away as I can from my parents, go to university away and escape. And that's kind of one of my skills that I learned to get through was we can't avoid things and run away. It just doesn't make things any better. But at my young age, I thought that was the only thing I could do. And because of that, didn't have a relationship. And the first boyfriend I met, I married. I thought that, you know what, this guy is going to whisk me away and everything is going to be perfect. So I ended up moving all the way to England. So I literally just escaped as far enough as I could, left family and friends. And looking at hindsight and being more mature now, I realized it was a very unhealthy relationship right from the beginning and very controlling, but you wanted someone to take care, right? I wanted someone to take care of me and realize that everything was okay. It obviously wasn't. And during that process, when you're not loved and you really feel deep down that it's not the right relationship, but you don't know how to get out, what do? You try to be as small as you can. I thought that if I could just shrink, then I wouldn't be noticed and then I wouldn't be as hurt. And that really doesn't make sense. But in some ways, to me, I felt that that was the only thing that I could do. And that meant losing weight. I thought if I can't control my career, my relationships, or anything, I can control what I put in my mouth. And I wanted to be as small as I could. So that led me down a road of a significant eating disorder. And being in health and fitness, I was very good at hiding it. And working at a gym, doing 3 spin classes a day, teaching, like it fed my eating disorder, but it also made it as an excuse as in, well, yeah, I train all day, so I'm going to be thin. And throughout that whole process, my husband didn't want to be with me anymore. He had an affair and he didn't want to be with me. And I was so broken at that time and living out in England. If he had wanted to make it work, I would have stayed. And it would have been the biggest mistake of my life. And I definitely would have been 6 feet under and not been around here. So that was in 2011. And just to put in hindsight how small I was 97 pounds, but I'm 5'9". So there was nothing left of me. And when I came back to Canada, I moved back into Toronto. My parents were here and I didn't see them. So they really didn't know what I looked like. And the devastation on my dad's face was almost enough for me to say, okay, I surely I need to start making a change. And that was it. And it kind of was nothing for myself or thinking, yeah, you know what, I need to do this for me. At that point, I'm like, I just don't want my dad to be upset and disappointed with his only daughter the rest of his life if I'm no longer here. And I realize now as a therapist how hard that is for parents when they see their child with an eating disorder and they can't do anything about it. They can't force feed them. And it's just sitting there watching someone waste away their life is horrible. So I'm glad I had, the little bit of strength in me to say, okay, I've got to make my dad proud. I've got to figure something out and not let that shithead win.
Mhm.
So, this brings into the point of my last name. And this is actually really funny. So my original last name is Pasma, so that's Dutch. And I married my first husband. His last name was Fish. And my first name is Jill with a G. So I would have been Gillfish. I legit. I can't make this stuff up. So I changed my first name to Jill with a J and was Jill Fish and thought, well, okay, I obviously am not going to keep that name, but I don't want to go back in the past and be a Pasma. So I took a magazine. I went down by the lake thinking what will make my dad proud. And a little bunny ran by my feet. And I thought, okay, I'll be a bunny. And I legit just changed my last name to Bunny. And that magazine was fitness. And I thought, what would make my dad proud? I would be a model. Like, don't even ask me why my dad would be proud of that, because that's definitely not the case either. But I thought if I was strong, like those women with muscles, my dad would be proud of me. And that led me down a 6-year road to becoming the girl on the magazines and winning competitions and really just being physically attractive, because at that time I wasn't actually wanting to deal with inside my head and all the pain that I went through. So I went from 97 pounds to about 140. And I thought that was going to be my life. Everything was great. And we all know shit always hits the fan.
I have a question. Do you know how much your
Mhm.
body fat was when you were 140 and competing?
I actually was still pretty high
Oh,
compared to most. So I know we go along this road of men are usually like 3 to 6%. And we hear some women going down 9. That's bullshit. I will say no, they're not 9% unless they're going into a bod pod for real testing. I was still at about 16%. And that is an elite athlete.
because
So it was,
I've heard
mhm.
about how that's the one of the things that really wrecks your body is having such a low
Yeah.
body fat. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. So, and that's where I think we go along this road of saying, well, what's moderate lean, what's lean? And we think, oh, if I'm in the 20%, I'm fat. I hear this all the time. That's not the case. That, moderately in the 20s to like even 27% is healthy
Really?
for a woman. It is healthy, right? And that's where you hear where we don't really understand body fat and where it can be stored. That, we think 16%. If someone heard I went on stage and won at the top shows at 16%, they'd be like, you need to get lower. No. So it doesn't give that full picture, but oftentimes we have such a skew of what we think of how lean we should be. And yes, it is unhealthy. We have organs, they need to be protected. And when they're not, we're just asking for it. And it's unfortunate that we are putting so much value onto what we look at and how small we are. And I say that just because I've been through it, that I was the smallest. And was I happy? Oh my God, no. No. And we
I
always
saw,
think that if we're smaller, we'll be happy. And unfortunately, that's not the case. It's just that we don't want to actually deal with the shit that we're going through. So we'll just bypass and focus on something else.
yeah, I'm probably every single person listening can relate to that horrible relationship with the scale.
Mhm.
Now we have the body, fat complex, or the machine that measures your body fat composition, dieting, yo-yo dieting, all of that.
Mhm.
And we all can relate to that. And since you went through that and you
Mhm.
start competing, and like you said, kind of hiding, it's basically just shifting
Oh, yeah. I was just really good at
one
hiding
disorder
my
to the next
issues.
disorder. Yeah.
I was really good at hiding it. And I'd say that, like, I guess that's a little bit of an accomplishment in a very weird way that, if we really want to hide something, we can be very good at it, right? We can find careers and professions that is an excuse. And really, yeah, competing just masked my eating disorder. Although I was healthier weight, you look at it, you're like, wow, you went from 97 to 140. I was still obsessed with food. I was still obsessed with my body. I was not any healthier mentally. I was actually worse because I was getting more praise and everybody wanted to quote unquote look like me. But what hurts is we hear that and we think, okay, yeah, this is what I'm best at. And that's so sad. And we're always giving so many compliments to people in their physique. And we live in a Western culture that happens. But actually, are we happier inside? And I will say, no, not at all. And it's when I left that industry because I didn't have a choice was when I actually started to love myself.
Mm.
Mhm.
So seriously, how do you do that? How did you do that?
I
We
didn't have a
all wanna
choice.
know.
That's why I say, unfortunately, and this is what happens to a lot of us, we don't have a choice. We will not do something until it becomes a worse off situation if we don't. And when I was competing, I just noticed my body was not responding the way that I wanted it to. Was always extremely tired. And I thought that was, again, just part of competing. But when you start hitting the circuit and you start noticing other athletes at your level and they're able to do things all day, I couldn't understand why I couldn't match that. And I know we shouldn't compare, but it just didn't make sense to me. And I would train, but I would, you know, constantly have to not have that recovery process, couldn't sleep enough. And then my eyes started to go a little bit. And, I wear contacts. I'm blind as bad as it is. And I remember going through an entire box, and they're expensive. And my husband saying, like, Jill, or he was my boyfriend at the time. Sorry, we'll get to that. I have a second husband. That's right, guys. So my boyfriend at the time said, well, why don't you go to the eye doctor? Like, that's not right. I'm like, okay, maybe it's not just the box, but we'll go in and see. And that led me down quite a long road of different testing. And it was found out that I had MS. And that's when I realized, when I was putting things together, that that was why I couldn't compete at the level that I was trying to. And I was comparing myself to people that didn't have an autoimmune disease. And yeah, I had no choice. I had to leave because my body was telling me, you're done. And I remember the last show, and my husband, or my boyfriend at the time, it's been a long time when you're with somebody, like 11 years. And I remember walking the backstage of the Arnold's and couldn't feel my legs. Lucky we put on a massive tan because with MS, I have discoloration of my legs with lack of blood flow. And wearing 5-inch heels is very difficult, and especially when you're cutting water. It's the stupidest thing I could have done. And I remember thinking, there's no way I can stand on that stage for 30 minutes. I will fall. And my boyfriend said, you better just get first call out. That's the thing, or you're not going on. And I remember going up there, doing a great job, called my name for the first call outs, and I just walked to the center of the stage and was like, fuck, I can't move. So you better not ask me to go to the right or the left because I'm just winning the show and I got to leave. And luckily got off and fell to the back of the stage. We had to ice my legs, and that was it. My body had literally given up right there. And then people just thought I was emotional and happy, but the people closest to me knew that this is not good. And from that moment, retired and said, okay, I'm going to get my health back. And during that process of trying to live with MS, then realized I had a second blow while I was tired and was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So within about a 6-7 month span, had 2 massive blows, and I was 30 years old. And that was when I didn't have a choice. And I had to ask myself, what am I going to do? Because I can't train myself out of this. I can't punish myself, which I was very good at. And I had to actually heal. And that was it, where I said, okay, I've got to now figure out what's going on up in my head and start to be my best friend. And that was the biggest change that completely shifted my entire trajectory of my career, of my life, and how I see living and happiness, was because of those 2 really difficult moments. I actually am very grateful for them.
Right. So you get out on stage, you win your last competition, and you exit stage and collapse because
And
your
no one
legs.
knows that. Yep. No one knows that. All they see is the highlight reel. Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
that's the hardest thing that Luke, my boyfriend, now husband, says the hardest thing, that everyone sees the best and I see the worst. And I see everything that's happening behind the scenes and how much pain you're in. And I have to support this. And he did, but it said it almost broke him, and it almost broke us, because he's like, I'm watching the person I love basically kill herself for a trophy. And it, like, I sit back in hindsight and I'm like, wow, like, why didn't I just listen? But again, until we're ready, we're not going to listen. And he knew that. And again, that's the hardest thing when we watch somebody in pain.
Wow. You must be amazing to have that much patience just to
Yeah.
let
Yeah.
you come to your own conclusion.
Yeah.
How did you know, or how did you come up with, I need to become my best friend? How did you come, how did you know that?
I realized that I was punishing myself for how long, and if I want to live a long life, I did not want to live it the way that I was and the way I was treating myself. It was hell. And I had one choice. It's like, I got one life. So am I just going to be miserable and choose to be miserable, or can I be my best friend? And I knew that there was hope to do that. And I hadn't given myself the opportunity or chance to do it. I actually never put in the work to try to be my best friend. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not competing. My body's breaking up with me physically. So I've got to figure something else out. And luckily I had that fight to do it.
What was step one?
Step one was getting help from someone else. Yeah. It was the hardest thing when we ask for help. And it's embarrassing when we are, the top of our game, or we're seen as an elite, to then say we're broken and have to be brutally honest. Oh, it was hard. I wanted to run. I wanted to avoid, make excuses. Oh, I did. But I knew, I'm like, no, like I owe this to myself. And that was going to see a professional and then being amazed by it, of what I was learning. It was fascinating. And then that's when I thought, I'm like, I need to do this for others. And I went back to school. I didn't have to, but I'm like, there is something so much more beautiful in this world than writing a food plan and exercise plan. I was sick of it. I'm like, I don't even want to do this anymore. It revolts me because there's so much more. And that's what I wanted to do. Was that one person changed my life, because I got the mental health help I needed and I was hooked.
Wow. How
Mhm.
did you heal your body?
I always
Start with
say
the
first it
mind
comes
first.
from the mind. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I always say our brain, like I love neuroscience. I've always been quite nerdy. So really going into that and realizing that anything we do, it starts with our brain, right? And it is our powerhouse. So I had to refuel it properly. And that was through food, that was through sleep, that was through therapy and rewiring the crap I was telling myself and believing, and rules that may have been helpful as a competitor or as a model, but are really no longer helpful in the real world because we know that's not real. That was the first part. And then once I was able to refuel the brain a little bit better, it was way easier to manage my mind. And then my body was starting to work with me. And that was the big thing, that it wasn't punishment and it was taking a step back. And it's weird to say that, but that's what I had to do, was allow my body to heal. Mhm.
But at one point you said you gained a whole lot of weight.
Oh,
What was
yeah.
that? Where was that in the journey?
So I was 97 pounds in 2011, went to about 140 and fluctuated 135 to about 145 competing. And after that, and then going through and getting diagnosed with thyroid cancer, I had a thyroidectomy. So they removed my thyroid. And actually that was really easy. Like I actually really enjoyed that process of going and getting surgery, as in I didn't have my phone. I got a night to myself in the hospital. Like I literally had nothing to do. And I was so like, I need to do this, this, and this. So to then being, knocked out, going to sleep was nice. Waking up and, not having to deal with work, because I was a workaholic, and just taking night to myself was actually really nice. And this is kind of my funny me. The nurse was amazing. And I said to her, listen, this is going to be the time of my life. I've got ginger ale, I got arrowroot, like animal crackers to eat all night. And I just want to get high. Like, I just want to have a fun time. And she's like, all right. So literally I had the best night in the hospital, and everyone laughs hearing that. I'm like, but you know what? I was in a safe place. I just wanted to enjoy myself. And I thought, okay, like I got this. This is easy. No. Without a thyroid, obviously, it's very difficult to regulate your body. Didn't really even compute that, because I just wanted to avoid what was actually going to happen, because I was feeling better just not dealing with it. And through that process, you have to take medication. They have to figure out the right levels, and went from about 135 to 170. Yeah, that was hard. So to say that I haven't been on both spectrums, I have. And what was most difficult with that was I was, quote unquote, trying to do everything that I knew possible, but I couldn't drop the weight, and it just kept going on. It just kept putting on, and then dealing with the doctors, and they're saying patience. And it's the hardest thing to hear when you're going through it and you just want it to come off, but patience. And that was what I had to deal with. And going through therapy and getting help was patience and respecting that. So yeah, went through that. And then my body naturally through time dropped that weight. And funny enough, I'm the same weight as I was when I competed, but I don't train as hard, don't have as much muscle, but my body's healthy. And it will get into a really beautiful state when our mind is healthy, our brain is healthy, despite maybe my ailments with MS that we can go through of how you heal. But if you treat your body with respect and listen to it versus what other people do, that's when it'll start to sing.
I love that. It'll
Mhm.
start to sing.
Yep.
I do want to talk about MS because I
Mhm.
have a couple friends who are struggling with that as well.
Mhm.
I would love to help them.
Mhm.
Actually, it's probably about the
Anyone.
same for almost any autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
Um, Help us, share with us how you
Mhm.
healed your body.
Yeah. I always say with MS, what I've learned is every day is different.
Mm.
And that is one thing that I've realized, that some days are better than others. Some days neurologically we're in more pain. And
Mm.
it's accepting that this is our life. It's not that I can just get rid of it until they come up with a cure, but it's best learning how we can deal with our body at that time, but also keeping open doors to all possibilities and things that are available. So I am a believer of obviously Western medicine. I'm a believer that like specialists and doctors are there for a reason, but it's having a good relationship with them and asking questions and not being dictated to, because I hate being told what to do. But if I feel that I'm an advocate and I hear and listen and ask questions and I come up with the solution myself, although they usually come and we collaborate, that is the first part. Because if we feel that we are an advocate for our health, we're more likely to stick to it. And that was the thing for my health journey in MS, was I didn't want to hear negative. That was one thing as part of my healing journey and talking to my doctors was, if you come and first tell me something negative, I'm out, because I need to hear something positive. There are so many great things. So, but you telling me I'm going to be in a wheelchair in 2 years, which they stated, I'm not even close. And this is what they say, and it's a scare tactic. I didn't need to hear that. And I said, be positive, give me positive reinforcement, and then let's work together. So that is one of the biggest things, is be an advocate and ask for positive reinforcement as well. And that's what we need. We don't need more detriment. Like there's enough Googling that goes on for us to see what happens. And then
You're
it's looking at what's in our control at this moment. It's looking at how we can control our bodies. So I don't go out at night because my body needs rest. I know that I get so tired because that's just part of my symptoms of MS. And there's a ton of for different people. So I know that I get tired. So I go to sleep 8 o'clock, usually on the couch. I pass out. If my husband's not home, I usually go to bed at 6:30 or 7. I'm not kidding, but I'm okay with that because
wow.
yeah, I love sleep. I'm like, my body recovers and it feels great than feeling like, oh, I can't go out with my friends. I realize these are boundaries that I need to have in order for my body to work at its best. And I know that a lot of people with autoimmune feel like it's unfair. And I went through that. And I think we all go through stages, but, and this sounds terrible, but what I think is unfair is what's happened in Turkey. I think what's unfair is sexual assault, murder. I just put it as in, this is the card I've dealt with. There's a lot of other things that are unfair. And I'm not going to allow that to be, oh, I can't go out at night with my friends. It's a choice. And I just look at it. This is the beautiful life that I have been given, and I'm going to enjoy it. So it's creating boundaries. So I go to sleep and I eat healthy. And that's what I look at. If I eat like crap, I feel like crap. And again, that's the same thing. Is it unfair that I have to eat healthier? It's just a reference of how we think about it in perspective. So that's the biggest things that I do are those things of just doing what's in my control. And then obviously, if and when my health shifts, I take it in stride, because it might happen. I don't know.
You don't know. How important do you think it is to healing and happiness
Mhm.
and joy to change the perspective and your
Mhm.
perspective around whatever situation is in your life? And
Everything.
how do you change it?
Yeah. First, everything. I think we all have a bias to be negative. And I always say take a bird's eye view, because we know if we're in it emotionally, when we're in pain, we can't think logically. We can think logic and emotion, they're two different things, right? But if we can see a different perspective or ask ourselves, what is some different ways we can think of it? We have to do that to ourselves. We owe it. It's just like if we had a daughter and she was going through a difficult time, we look and we're like, oh, there's a different way to look at it. We have to do that to ourselves, because if we don't, all we're going to do is look at every negative thing and every excuse and avoid actually working on things that we need to, because it feels great when we no longer go straight to the worst case scenario, but it takes work, right? It's not just going to click like that, where I do worksheets a lot. I do like responsibility pies and look at, what's my responsibility for it. Like I do the work and I still do the work. But what's beautiful is one time if I'm going through pain, I might not go straight to catastrophe and I realize I'm healing. But it's everything when it comes to perspective. It feels so good when we're happy and fulfilled, even though we're going through pain, because at the end of the day, when we look at nearer to the end of our life, and someone listening might have seen that with a loved one or family, when it's right at the end, nothing else matters. And I've experienced that. My partner has in his field of fire and my family, and I've watched so many deaths, so much pain, that at the end of it, I just honor the time that I have here, because there's no other way to look at it. Otherwise, we are wasting one beautiful life that we have.
That's so true. That might be the most important perspective to have, just to start. And now you're a therapist and you're helping so many people. You talk about building that multiple perspective. You're helping me with that. And it's really, really helped in every way. Everything that the challenges that I have. And I love it. I think it's beautiful. Could you explain the multiple perspective and how someone can build that?
So I always say there's a multiple perspective approach, right? So sometimes we think of, I even take it just really fun. You might have 5 people in your life. You're like, damn, they're amazing. Even if we don't know them, right? We could take a situation, could be a shitty situation. And then we look at the 5 people, like, what would they think of this? What would she do in this situation? That's what we start doing. Whether we believe it or not, all we want to do is look at a perspective. And that just starts to make a small shift. And it's just a bird's eye view approach. And we have to do that. And it's journaling. And one of the biggest things I talk about is that 2.0 life. And that is a multiple perspective, that we all have this life that we want, or maybe we don't even know, but there is that 2.0 life out there. And I would say everything until probably only 2-3 years ago, I was living a 1.0. Me being on covers of magazine, 1.0 life, I wasn't happy. But it's until we look at it and say to ourselves, what do we want our career, our living situation, our relationships, and really look and ask ourselves what we want it to be, and then what we're willing to do, we won't have it. And that's where I always look at that 2.0, and I define her. She's beautiful. And that's where I ask, I'm like, well, what would my 2.0 person do in this situation? It's like, well, she really wouldn't do that. Okay. And that's a big thing, is we have to define what it is that we want in our life, where we want to be, because otherwise, what are we working towards? And we're going to have setbacks and detours. We're going to have health implications, but it doesn't mean that we can't live a 2.0 life. I do. I have MS, and I'm like, cool. Okay. My grandma had it. She lived to 96, and she was a warrior. And that's what I look at. And some of the people that have been in pain and autoimmune disease, what good life is too when we have it. So I feel like sometimes it's actually our superpower in a very weird way, because we respect life in a whole different perspective than other people, if we choose to. Yeah.
And if you're having a hard time, if you're having a hard time choosing the better perspective or building that multiple perspective, you're saying first, have the vision of who you want to be in all areas, right? You just said
all areas. Yes.
And then what you're willing to do to achieve, to have that life.
Yeah. Because oftentimes what we do is we say we want something, but we're not willing to do it. Right. So it's looking at what we want in our 2.0, and not what if, oh, I can't do this. We have all these hesitations. We self-sabotage because, it's going to be very uncomfortable trying to achieve that. But I always say, if we're feeling miserable or shit, you're going to feel miserable or shit, whether or not you do something or you stay stagnant. And I always say to anyone I work with, it's going to be hard. Like working with me and signing up isn't going to be like, yeah, everything's easy now. It's going to be hard, but it will get easier. But if you don't do anything, it's just always going to be hard. Right. And it's unfortunate a lot of the time when we do something, we think everything is just going to be okay. And it's
Yeah.
not all the time. But when we have support, accountability, and even somebody else to give us a bird's eye view and a different perspective, it helps. But we have to be wanting and willing to hear it. And then sitting with our insecurities and the shit that we're doing. And I always say, oftentimes when we're living a 1.0, we're not happy. It's because we have terrible boundaries, whether they're too soft or rigid. We avoid, because, we'll make excuses and avoid quite a bit. And those are the issues: avoidance, excuses, and boundaries. And if we look at it and ask ourselves, are those things in line? And if they're not, we've got to be willing to work on it.
Do they align with the person I want to be?
Correct. Yeah. And sometimes the hardest things when we change, sometimes the people that are in our life might not be anymore. And I mean, we have to walk away from them because we've changed and we've upgraded, but they haven't upgraded with us. And I've lost a lot of people in my life becoming a 2.0. And I'm okay with that because I look and realize how toxic it was. And it's not like they were evil. I just look and said, that just wasn't for me. And I had to walk away, and it's okay. Or we just put them in a different compartment. But the people that we love, they'll resist a bit because they want you to be happy. And they look and it's like, are you sure you want to do this time? Oh, I want to make sure that you're happy. They usually, when you're smiling, they will support you. So I say when we go on diets, for example, I hear all the time, my husband doesn't support me. He doesn't support you because he knows it's not going to work, because you come around, oh, I can't eat that for dinner. Like, what's he going to do? Be like, yeah, you shouldn't eat that. He's going to be like, it's okay, have that. He wants you to be happy. But if you walked in there and say, yeah, you know what, I don't need that, and you have a smile on your face and say something else, he'll support you. So it's all perspective, how you take it.
I love that. I haven't heard somebody say it like that.
Yeah, my friend came to me and said, I can't eat chicken. I'd be like, it's okay. Or have that glass of wine. It's okay. We want them to be happy. But if you're there or you have a food plan, because sometimes with autoimmune, we have to have certain boundaries too of what we can and can't eat. And then we have food pushers that, say, oh, well, come on, eat that. It's because we're sulking or we're giving off energy that, oh, you know what, I really want that. And most of the time they're not being evil or manipulative. They just want to make sure that you're smiling and having a good time. And if you walked in with a smile and say, yeah, no, I'm okay, and you change the subject, they're not going to keep pressuring you.
Got it. I love that.
Yeah. So try it out. Anyone listening, see how it works.
Yeah. It depends on your attitude, on what your choices are. You could still have some of those people in your life. They just want you to be happy. And that really explains, it's really like a light bulb for me, explains why they want you to have the drink or the cake or the cookie or the whatever.
If you're smiling and happy, oh, they'll support you. But oftentimes our loved ones have seen us through pain and diet after diet and failed attempt. And it's like, they're upset because they know what they're going to have to deal with too. But if they see you smiling through it, because that's a different perspective that we're looking at, a sustainable approach. And that's what I mean. We have to have a different perspective, and not that it's unfair. And we look at it differently, that it's a choice and what we're willing to do to feel great. That's what matters. And then more people will be jumping in on that bandwagon to support.
So glad you said that, because, anybody who has kids that, they want to lose weight and they want to get healthy, but they feel so sad about it. Like, my daughter, they don't want to be left out. Everybody else is going to Chick-fil-A and everybody else is going to In-N-Out, and they don't want to be the only ones eating healthy food. And it's hard. So hard for them.
It's one of the hardest things, right? Because we know that as we're older. But if anyone's listening and is an adult and they have like maybe their old high school yearbooks, I've done this with a few of, I'm not going to say the people because, man, that would be terrible. But in high school, we know the cool girls, because I was not one, that was skinny and they could eat their pizza and all that stuff in the cafeteria. And, we're just looking and be like, I wish I could look like that. They don't look like that at 40 because they didn't have to build the skills. And I say this to any teenager, if you want to lose weight or you feel like you need to be healthy and you want to be healthier, it's actually a perfect time, because the ones that are naturally thin and have a really fast metabolism are not going to learn the skills because they don't have to. And then life goes, relationships, they become a mom, hormones, and then they put on all that weight. But at a young age, if we can learn the skill, they're already ahead of the game. And literally what I have done, I have like 10 or 15 cool girls in high school. I literally have their picture then, and I have stalked them on Facebook. I've pulled their photo of what they look like, and I say, here you go. I'm showing you a flash of exactly what's going to happen. It's terrible, but I'm like, this is what happened. So you might see that now, and it's difficult. You're in that moment, but I want you to know that that's not long lasting. What I'm going to teach you is so that you're not like that. And it just gives them that like, huh, okay. It is really cool. Yeah. And I'm sorry for anyone that I've taken that before and after for.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Well, they
Yeah.
didn't have to try. They didn't have to learn it. So it's
No,
not their fault either, unless,
no.
and
And
then,
it's the biggest thing is that multiple perspective. And as moms, right, when we say, I don't want to teach my daughter the same things, you know, that we did and dieted, unless you've dealt with it, you're going to pass that on subconsciously. And that's where we have to heal, and we have to take that role model approach. So any daughter that I work with, the mom's in there in the portal, she's doing the work too, because we want to make sure we're synergistic and together. It's important, right? And that's where it's time that we become advocates. But it's difficult for young teens, and it's a lot more difficult today than it was in our age, where TikTok and all that stuff is available.
sure is. Well, and also the food is different. So the actual
Vastly different.
chemical makeup of the same burger at In-N-Out 30 years ago is totally different, or at McDonald's or whatever. I mean, In-N-Out.
Yeah. And it's getting them to learn different things, right? They always want to go and eat foods and do that. And that's part of being a teenager. And I say, yeah, do it. But what other things can we do in the process and have fun that doesn't involve food, but start teaching that at a young age now so that they don't feel deprived. But it's not easy. No.
It's just a lifelong journey, I think, for some of us. I'm almost 50.
And getting them a mentor. That's what I always say. Like, it's a blessing to help, you know, young teens, because they deserve that mentor to help them, to give them that logical and that perspective where they're not going to have it. But it's getting that some person on their side, like a big sister or a therapist, to say, hey, long term, we're going to get through this. We'll get through the periods. We'll get through the first breakup. Man, I wish I had that. Right. So we need those things. Yeah, I wish I had that, where we think we'll go to a therapist when stuff is bad, but they're just there to help our brain. And they're like, it's amazing. There's nothing wrong with a therapist. I think that every brain deserves somebody just to look at different perspective, or just a little tweak.
Right. And all of us could get some new advice, an outside perspective, some.
And if I always say that if we can get that help and we can afford that and not have to go into crisis mode, you're in a better situation. Reason one, you have somebody there that if something happens, you can actually bypass the system a lot quicker. And number two, if we don't have somebody, and you know, we were talking about this before the podcast, there's a 9-10 month wait list to get with a therapist. And that is unfair, and that is unjust. So when we hear that, what are we going to do about it? I can't fix the system, but what we can do is get that little help ahead of time, a mentor, so that that doesn't happen. And then we feel like there's nothing. So there's always something we can do. And sometimes it's preventative.
I love that. And you've been such a blessing to me and my daughter and our family.
Oh, you guys are amazing.
I really urge anyone who's having any problems whatsoever, just get some help, get someone who's a professional. Call Jill. I mean, you've helped us so much, and we're just getting started. You know, we're just.
It's communication, right? And it's amazing to see your communication, and we lose that. And it's just asking questions. And I always say, once we learn the chemistry of someone else, we can actually learn how to speak to them in a way that they listen. And sometimes we do it in a way that just eagers their defensive mechanisms very well. Like, we know how to piss people off, right? Like, when we live with them, we know how to do it.
Oh yeah.
And I always say one of the best ways to do it is get out of your home, out of that environment where it's very easy to be defensive. Go in a public place go for dinner where you have to be a little bit more, reserved if we are very emotional. Makes a huge difference. But I always say be communicative. And then half the time we wait for shit to hit the fan, everything blows up. So my husband and I go for a walk every night. Luckily, we have a dog, but we do our 10, 20 minutes. And that's where we chat. We just talk, right? And that's that. And sometimes it's difficult conversations, but we know it's 10, 20 minutes. Is something pissing you off? Have I done something? That's our time we talk about it. And it's just, that is like a neutral zone. But it took some time, but it's just made our relationship stronger. Yeah. And it's just getting someone on board. But once they start to see you happier and you're making changes and we're not asking them to make changes, things start to happen. Yeah.
I love that. I'd love to.
We went like everywhere on that.
Everywhere. I know. It's, you have so much to teach us, but I love, before we wrap up, I just want to hear the story about how you and Luke got together.
Oh my gosh. So funny.
Because my question was like, you have this boyfriend who's watching you walk around basically naked in front of thousands.
Yeah. So actually, he said that I've ruined every female body, because when you're in that sport, like, poor guy, I made him take progress pictures, like up my butt, like look at everything, but I wouldn't let him touch me because I'm like, no, I have to go and train. He's like, so I understood glutes and the portions and symmetry. He's like, I can't look at another woman without saying, you know what, she could be more symmetrical. So it's actually a blessing in disguise.
That's amazing.
But yeah, he's incredibly supportive. But actually, when I came back, funny enough, this is a small world. So my maid of honors in my first marriage, one of them had a sister that was married to Luke's best friend. And when I came back, we were supposed to be at a party together. He didn't show up. He doesn't have Facebook. They Facebooked him to come meet this girl. He never got it, but it was probably the best thing. And then 2 months went by and we were just at my friend's house and they said, you should meet this guy. He likes CrossFit, you'd be a good fit. And he's a firefighter. I'm not going to lie. Like, who doesn't want to date a firefighter? I was like, So I'm like, okay, we'll go on a date. And we met. He came to my launch party of my business. And the sweetest thing was he didn't come to dinner, but there was stairs going up. And my mom, my dad, and my best friend at the time, my granddad, although he's passed away now, he went to the dinner and he needed help going down the stairs. I had no idea Luke was there. I didn't know who he was other than this fireman picture. And he helped my granddad into the car. He didn't know that was my family. We met. I gave him my business card. I was drunk. It took him 7 days to message me. Yeah, he played it cool. And he's like, I did everything that I shouldn't do. And that's why we're together. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, you played that well. Okay, I can't get mad at that. And that's where we met for the first time. Then kind of things unfolded as a best friend. And I said I wasn't ready to date somebody. But he knew from the moment that I was the one. And
Did you?
literally, did I? Didn't want to. I think I pushed every way not to, but yeah, when I think of it, I tried everything to push him away and he was just sitting back, allowing me to make the bigger decisions because I would have ran away then. So he knows me well. And we went from 6 months of being best friends to dating. And when he met my family and my granddad, it was just tears. And they're like, we know exactly who you are. So he met my entire family before me. And he is the best man. And I always say to anybody going through pain or divorce, I've been there, if we allow ourselves to be open and heal, there is another prince out there. And sometimes it's not a lifetime, but the time that you do have is special, well, whatever that might be.
Indeed. Amen.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing.
The only thing I'm upset about is my dog didn't pop up.
I know. All right, we got to show him. Let's see him. Say hi. Did we wake him up?
Yeah.
What's his name?
This is Sir Rusty. So he is the therapy dog. And he is always with me on my lap. So everybody didn't have a clue that the whole podcast he's there. And now he'll just go right back to sleep again.
Oh, he's so adorable. Okay, wait a second. What happened with the raccoon? I didn't see the follow-up.
Oh, this is even more embarrassing. So apparently the only time that shit goes wrong in my house is when my husband works 7 days a month, when there's rats in the pool, drowned, like I've got to deal with this. So I come home from the gym and I'm hearing like the loudest thing. I put it on Instagram because you could hear the hair and like the nails. It was so loud.
What
And
was it?
I call my dad because I don't know what to do. And it just got louder. I screamed. I ran out of the house. Like I was hysteric. So usually when we're afraid, we're building it up for ourselves. I realized what I was doing. It was a squirrel in the eavesdropped. It wasn't even a raccoon in the house. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I legit, I'm like, no, it was
a squirrel.
It was a squirrel. Yeah. Yeah.
Do
I
you
ran
know
out of the
how
house
it just
screaming.
ran? It
No,
just ran out, or how did where did it go?
it was in there. And yeah, our neighbors came ladder and like they thought like someone had died and it was a squirrel. So I'm never gonna live that down ever in my life. No. Yeah.
Never. Well, Lord, we're for sure not going to let you live it down. That is hilarious. Such a great story. Oh my gosh. Jill, you're amazing. Tell people how they can find you.
Yeah. So very easy. Jill Bunny's my name, obviously went through there. Just type it on Google and my website's there. You can check out more information. And I always say I'm more than happy, book a free call, we chat. And we'll see what we can do to either help you or your daughter. So I work with solely females. I don't get the male's brain. I don't want to get the male's brain. I'm all about the women.
Amen, sister. Thank you again so much.
No, thank you, Karen. Amazing. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day and took some nuggets and creates the beginning of their 2.0.
Yeah, we sure did. And for everybody listening, thank you for being here. God bless you. Thank you. Remember, just one day at a time, you can create the life that you want. It's just one day at a time. And God bless you. Create today. Have a wonderful day.